Savannah, Georgia, 1748. Sister Marie Claire, 51 years old, head of St. Catherine's Convent's disciplinary committee, known for her iron enforcement of chastity vows, stood before the entire congregation with her belly swollen in the 7th month of pregnancy. The silence was deafening, and then she spoke words that would shatter colonial America. I carry a blessing from God, a miracle that proves faith and knowledge can walk hand in hand. The father? A 17-year-old enslaved boy named Thomas, owned by the convent itself. But this wasn't what anyone thought. Sister Marie hadn't broken her vows. Not technically. What she'd done was far stranger, far more calculated, and infinitely more disturbing. Tonight, we reveal what really happened behind those convent doors and why the Catholic Church has kept it buried for 275 years. Sister Marie Claire arrived in Savannah from Quebec in 1741. Her reputation arriving before her like thunder before lightning. 44 years old, 26 years in religious life, she'd earned a fearsome reputation throughout New France. The woman who never smiled. The nun whose silence carried more weight than any sermon. Mother Superior Josephine had requested her specifically to reform St. Catherine's, which had grown soft, relaxed in its standards, whispered about in parishes up and down the coast. The transformation was immediate and brutal. Sister Marie implemented French monastic rules with military precision. Mandatory confession 3 times weekly. Inspection schedules that left no corner unchecked. A discipline committee that investigated even the rumor of improper conduct. The younger nuns learned to fear the sound of her footsteps in the corridor, the way her gray eyes seemed to see through walls and into souls. For 7 years, she was the perfect nun. Unmovable, incorruptible, devoted to God with an intensity that made even priests uncomfortable. And then, in the summer of 1748, something changed. The convent owned 9 enslaved people who managed gardens, kitchens, and physical maintenance. Among them was Thomas, a 17-year-old who'd been purchased 3 years earlier from a Charleston auction. He possessed something rare and dangerous for an enslaved person. He could read and write. His previous owner, a merchant fallen into debt, had taught him before selling him off. The convent used Thomas's literacy to manage correspondence and educational materials. He worked primarily in the library, copying texts, organizing documents, moving through the building like a ghost, present but invisible. The nuns had grown so accustomed to his presence that they barely noticed him anymore. He was in the chapel during morning cleaning, in the library during afternoon study, in the hallways delivering messages. His youth and his work made him seem less like a threat and more like furniture. Sister Marie had noticed him, of course. She noticed everything, but Thomas was no concern. Just another tool the convent employed, or so everyone believed. The first sign something was wrong came on an October morning when Sister Agnes, responsible for the convent's linens, entered the laundry room and found Sister Marie's nightdress marked with bloodstains. The pattern was unmistakable. Sister Agnes stood frozen because everyone knew Sister Marie hadn't menstruated in 4 years. At 51, those things had ceased. That's what made what she was seeing impossible. She rewashed it 3 times, hung it to dry in the private room, and said nothing. But the knowledge burned inside her like hot iron. 3 weeks later, Sister Marie fainted during morning chapel. She'd never shown weakness before. Never missed a prayer, never complained of any ailment. Mother Superior Josephine ordered her to the infirmary where Sister Catherine, the convent's medical attendant, examined her. What Sister Catherine discovered defied every natural law she knew. She examined Sister Marie twice, certain she'd made an error, then a 3rd time. Each examination confirmed the impossible. Sister Marie Claire was 3 months pregnant. The emergency meeting that evening included Mother Superior Josephine, Sister Marie, Sister Catherine, and Father Benedict Hammond, the chaplain. Sister Catherine presented her findings in a voice barely above a whisper. The physical symptoms, the ceased menstruation that had now resumed, the breast changes, the morning sickness Sister Marie had blamed on bad fish. Father Hammond's face flushed red. This is impossible. Sister Marie has served God for 33 years. There must be another explanation. A tumor, perhaps. I know the difference, Sister Catherine interrupted with shocking boldness. I've attended 17 births in this town. This is not a tumor. Mother Superior Josephine turned to Sister Marie, who sat with perfect posture, hands folded, expression serene. Sister, you must tell us the truth. How did this happen? What Sister Marie said next would echo through Savannah for generations. It is a blessing from God. The Lord has chosen me as his vessel, just as he chose the Virgin Mary. I've been faithful to my vows. I have never broken my promise to God. And yet, I carry new life. If you doubt me, examine my conscience. You will find it pure." The silence felt suffocating. Father Hammond gripped the desk until his knuckles turned white. "Sister," he said carefully, "are you suggesting this is a virgin birth? I'm stating what I know to be true. I have remained faithful to my vows, and I am with child. Draw whatever conclusions you wish." The meeting ended without resolution. Father Hammond left to send an urgent message to the Archbishop. Mother Superior confined Sister Marie to her cell, not as punishment, but as protection. But secrets in closed communities spread like water through limestone. By morning, every nun knew. By afternoon, the students' whispers had reached their parents. By evening, the story had infected Savannah. And in the slave quarters, Thomas stopped eating. For 3 days he took no food, his hands trembled when he worked, and late at night, when he thought others slept, they heard him weeping. The Archbishop's response arrived within a week. Sister Marie was to be examined by a panel of 3 physicians, questioned under oath, and if found to have violated her vows, immediately defrocked and expelled. 3 Charleston doctors arrived. All reached the same conclusion: approximately 15 weeks pregnant. Healthy. Normal, natural conception. Their written report, preserved in church archives, left no ambiguity. "We find no evidence of medical anomaly or divine intervention. This is a pregnancy resulting from normal physiological processes." The interrogation lasted 3 days. 11 hours of questions. Sister Marie never wavered. She'd maintained her vows, never been alone with any man, never engaged in any act that could result in pregnancy. She attributed her condition to God's will. On the 4th day, the interrogators changed tactics. They produced the convent's schedule logs, meticulous records Sister Marie herself had implemented. Why had she changed her prayer schedule in July? Why had she been in the library at unusual hours? Why had she requested access to the storage chapel 17 separate times between June and September? Sister Marie answered calmly: deeper spiritual needs, research on monastic practices, inspection of storage conditions. Then Bishop Fenwick asked the question that shattered everything. "Sister, do you know a young man named Thomas?" For the first time in 4 days, Sister Marie hesitated just 3 seconds, but everyone noticed. "Thomas works in the library. I've assigned him tasks." "Why do you ask?" "Because Thomas has requested to speak with me, and what he wants to confess, sister, concerns you." Thomas stood before the bishop and spoke words that would expose everything. He confirmed that Sister Marie hadn't lied. Not exactly. She'd maintained her vows, never engaged in physical contact with a man. But the pregnancy wasn't divine intervention. It was artificial insemination. The concept wasn't unknown in 1748. European scientists had experimented with animal breeding, successfully transferring reproductive material without physical contact. The process had been documented in French scientific journals, debated in medical societies, and condemned by religious authorities as attempting to usurp God's role in creation. Sister Marie had read about these experiments in the convent's library. The texts were supposed to be locked away, controversial materials deemed inappropriate. But as head of discipline, she had access to everything. She'd studied the procedures, the theoretical application, the success rates in sheep and cattle. Thomas explained that Sister Marie had approached him in late May with a proposal. She'd been frank about the purpose. She believed God was calling her to demonstrate that devotion could transcend physical limitation. She would become pregnant while maintaining her vows, proving that faith could overcome nature's boundaries. The procedure required Thomas to provide reproductive material in a glass vessel. Sister Marie would then use a specially prepared syringe, commissioned from a Charleston merchant under the guise of veterinary medicine, to transfer it. No physical contact. Technically, her chastity would remain intact. Thomas had refused at first. The request horrified him. If discovered, he would be killed. No explanation would save an enslaved black man involved in a nun's pregnancy. But Sister Marie had used the one leverage Thomas couldn't resist. She promised him freedom. She showed him documents, draft papers, her personal commitment written and signed. Help her with this experiment, and she would secure his freedom before the child was born. The procedures took place in the locked storage chapel late at night. 7 attempts between June and early August. The 8th attempt on August 12th resulted in pregnancy. When Thomas finished explaining, Bishop Fenwick sat in stunned silence. This wasn't adultery. This wasn't a broken vow, at least not physically. This was something far stranger, a calculated attempt to game theological loopholes. "Why are you telling us this?" Father Donnelly finally asked. "Sister Marie offered you freedom. This confession guarantees your death." Thomas's response revealed pain deeper than fear. "Because she lied to me. The freedom papers were forgeries. I saw the real documents 3 days ago. Sister Marie has no authority to grant manumission. She never did. She used me, put me in mortal danger, and never intended to honor her promise." I won't die for her pride. The church faced an impossible situation. Sister Marie had technically not broken her vows through physical contact, but she'd orchestrated something far more disturbing. A premeditated subversion of divine and natural law, and she'd manipulated an enslaved boy, putting his life at risk for theological vanity. The tribunal convened on November 15th. 5 senior clergy from Charleston, 2 from Virginia. Sister Marie appeared before them, her pregnancy now undeniable at nearly 6 months. She stood with the same serene expression, hands resting on her swollen abdomen. Sister, do you understand why you stand before this tribunal? I understand you doubt God's power to work miracles. The cardinal's jaw tightened. Sister, we've heard Thomas's testimony. This was not a miracle. This was manipulation. Is there a difference? Sister Marie asked calmly. God created nature. God created science. If I use tools he provided to achieve his will, how is that different from any other miracle? Did Jesus not use mud to heal the blind? Did Moses not use a staff to part the sea? All miracles employ earthly elements. The theological argument was sophisticated, more sophisticated than they'd expected. Sister Marie had prepared her defense carefully. Father Donnelly presented the evidence systematically, the medical journals, the syringe, Thomas's testimony. He argued that Sister Marie had committed fraud, not adultery, but something potentially more dangerous. She had attempted to manufacture a miracle, to deceive the faithful. Sister Marie countered each point with disturbing logic. Yes, she'd studied scientific texts. Wasn't knowledge of God's creation worship? Yes, she'd used medical equipment. Weren't doctors tools of God's healing? Yes, she'd involved Thomas. Hadn't God often used the humble to achieve great works? She never claimed to have created the pregnancy herself. She claimed only to have made herself available to God's will, and God had blessed her efforts. You coerced an enslaved man, Cardinal Hartley said, his voice rising. You promised him freedom you couldn't deliver. You put his life at risk. Where is God's will in that deception? For the first time, Sister Marie's composure cracked. Thomas misunderstood. I told him I would do everything in my power to secure his freedom. I never claimed to have authority myself. I intended to petition after the birth. But you showed him forged documents. Sister Marie's silence stretched for nearly a minute. I showed him documents that expressed my intent. Whether they carried legal authority was irrelevant to the larger purpose. Thomas was never in danger. I would have protected him. Cardinal Hartley stood, his chair scraping loudly. Sister, there are plantation owners in Savannah calling for his execution right now. There are mobs forming outside this building. Your protection means nothing. The tribunal recessed. During that time, news reached them that 23 men, led by plantation owner Harrison, DVOA had attempted to force their way into the quarters where Thomas was held. Only armed guards prevented violence. DVOA declared publicly that no blasphemous experiment would corrupt Georgia's moral foundation, and that the slave Thomas represented a cancer that must be cut out. The tribunal reconvened with new urgency. Cardinal Hartley delivered their decision. Sister Marie would be immediately defrocked and expelled. She would be confined to a Charleston residence until birth. After birth, the infant would be placed with a Catholic family, and she would be permanently exiled from Georgia, never permitted to claim religious authority again. Never allowed contact with the child, never permitted to speak publicly about these events. Thomas would be sold, not as punishment, but as protection. A Catholic merchant in Boston had agreed to purchase him and transport him to Massachusetts. The church would ensure his safety, but he would remain enslaved. The promise of freedom died with the ruling. Sister Marie received this judgment without visible emotion. She asked only one question. What will you tell people about the child? Cardinal Hartley's response carried the weight of institutional power protecting itself. We will tell them the truth. A woman who once served the church fell prey to pride. There was no miracle, only human vanity attempting to manufacture divine favor. But Sister Marie smiled, a small, knowing expression that sent chills through everyone present. You can tell them whatever you wish. But the child will be born. And when people see a healthy infant born to a woman who was 51, who hadn't menstruated in years, who doctors said should have been incapable of pregnancy, what will they believe? Your carefully prepared explanation, or their own eyes? The birth occurred on February 9th, 1749, in a secret Charleston residence. The location was kept confidential. 3 midwives attended, sworn to secrecy. Dr. Drayton supervised, documenting everything. The labor began at 1:15 in the afternoon. Sister Marie refused laudanum. She wanted full awareness. If this is to be my only opportunity for motherhood, I will not surrender consciousness. The labor lasted 14 hours. At 3:17 in the morning on February 10th, the baby emerged. A girl, perfectly formed, strong cry, healthy weight. Dr. Drayton delivered the placenta, examined it, found everything normal. He checked Sister Marie for complications and found only minor damage. Her bleeding was within normal range. Against all probability, she'd survived without major complication. The church had ordered immediate separation, but Dr. Drayton intervened. Give her 10 minutes. Complete denial of contact risks fever and dangerous melancholy. I've seen women die from it. Sister Marie looked down at her daughter with an expression the doctor would never forget. Not ecstatic joy, but something more complex. Triumph mixed with grief, wonder mixed with desperation. They will tell you I deceived people, she whispered to the baby, her voice hoarse. They will say I manufactured you through pride, but I know the truth. I was barren. 3 physicians confirmed it. Dr. Drayton himself said my body could not support pregnancy. Yet you exist. You breathe. You are perfect. The baby made small sounds, rooting instinctively. Sister Marie held her close, breathing in new life, memorizing every detail. Whether I used science or faith or both, something beyond human understanding happened. They say it wasn't a miracle because I employed mechanical means. But who decides what miracles look like? If God gave humans intelligence to understand his creation, is using that intelligence somehow less divine than passive waiting? You are my testimony. You are my answer to everyone who says faith and knowledge cannot coexist. At 3:29, 10 minutes after birth, Sister Agnes stepped forward. It's time. Sister Marie kissed her daughter's forehead once gently and released her. The door closed with a soft click that sounded impossibly final. Sister Marie turned her face to the wall and didn't speak for 3 days. The adoptive family, Jonathan and Savannah, Redmond of Virginia, arrived the next day. Prosperous, unable to have children, desperate for a baby. Bishop Fenwick handed them the infant and explained the conditions. They would tell everyone the child was their natural daughter. They would never reveal the truth. Never search for the biological mother, never discuss how they'd acquired the baby. They named her Charlotte, baptized her on February 20th, raised her as their own. She would never know different. Sister Marie remained in the Charleston residence for 2 months. Physically, she recovered quickly, surprising Dr. Drayton. Mentally, however, she'd descended into complete collapse. She ate only when forced, stared at walls for hours, refused to pray. At night, they heard her weeping. During these weeks, Sister Marie wrote extensively. Letters, theological arguments, personal reflection. Church officials eventually discovered and destroyed most of these documents. Only 3 letters survived, hidden by a young priest named Father O'Brien who couldn't bring himself to burn them. The first letter, dated March 5th, addressed the daughter she'd never see again. They tell me I sinned through pride. Perhaps they're right. But what is faith without action? What is belief without testing? I studied how life begins. I applied that knowledge. A child was born who doctors said couldn't exist. They call this deception. I call it partnership with divine purpose. The second letter, March 15th, addressed Thomas directly. I have sinned grievously against Thomas, and this sin weighs heavier than any other. I told myself his participation served a higher purpose, but I lied to him. I manipulated his hope for liberty to serve my goals. I told myself I would protect him, but I couldn't. The church sold him away, and I lack power to intervene. If there is damnation, I deserve it not for the pregnancy, but for how I treat another human being as a tool rather than a soul equal in God's eyes. The third letter contained a theological defense. The church fathers claim manipulating natural processes cannot constitute divine intervention. But I ask, what is prayer but attempting to influence divine will? What are sacraments but physical materials used to convey spiritual grace? I used knowledge instead of ritual, science instead of ceremony, but the goal remained identical: to demonstrate God's power working through human agency. The church's final decision came in April. Sister Marie would be exiled to the Convent of the Sacred Heart in Quebec, a cloistered community that maintained perpetual silence. She would take new vows: absolute silence, absolute withdrawal from worldly engagement. She would never teach, never write, never speak about her experiences. You are being granted mercy, Bishop Fenwick told her. The alternative is complete excommunication. May I ask one question? Sister Marie said finally. The bishop nodded. The child. Will she be told anything when she's older? Absolutely nothing. This conversation is the last time her true origin will be spoken aloud. Do you understand? Sister Marie understood. She nodded once and spoke no more. On April 23rd, Sister Marie departed Charleston aboard the merchant ship Harmony. She reached the Convent of the Sacred Heart on May 27th. Sister Catherine, who escorted her, wrote in a final letter. She entered the chapel, took took her place among the silent sisters, and began to pray. I don't know if she'll find peace, but she'll keep its silence. She has nothing left to say. The convent burned in 1763 during the 7 Years' War. No records survived indicating Sister Marie's fate. Official church records list her as deceased in 1749, making her actual end unknowable. Thomas's journey proved more perilous. Sold to a Boston merchant, he arrived in December 1748. But Boston's religious climate proved hostile. When Reverend Jonathan Cole learned someone connected to the scandal was in the city, he organized mobs calling for Thomas's head. Thomas's owner smuggled him onto a ship to Halifax, Nova Scotia in March 1749. There, a Scottish merchant named William Barrett put him to work managing warehouse records. Thomas survived one brutal winter. Then the historical record ends. After September 1750, no documentation mentions him. Some historians believe he gained freedom in Nova Scotia. Others think he died in the catastrophic winter of 1750 to 51. A third possibility suggests he joined free black settlers near Preston. Though evidence is fragmentary, the truth remains unknowable. Thomas vanished from history. One more powerless person destroyed by forces beyond his control. Charlotte, the infant at the scandal's center, lived a completely different life. The Redmonds raised her in Richmond, Virginia, providing education and social position. She grew into an intelligent, serious young woman. Married at 19 to Edward Fitzgerald, a merchant's son. Raised 4 children. Lived to age 73. Dying in Philadelphia in 1822. She never knew the circumstances of her conception, never knew the remarkable woman who'd brought her into the world through such extraordinary means, never knew about Thomas, or the scandal, or any of it. Whether she ever suspected her origins were more complex than she'd been told remains unknown. Family stories suggest she occasionally questioned why she bore no physical resemblance to either parent. But these questions, if she asked them, received no answers. St. Catherine's Convent never recovered. Enrollment dropped catastrophically. The Catholic Church closed it permanently in 1758, selling the property to a merchant who converted it to warehouses. During conversion, workers sealed the storage chapel where Sister Marie had performed her procedures. Official documents cited structural concerns, but church correspondence suggests the real motivation, eliminating any physical space associated with the scandal. The sealed chapel remains untouched today, its secrets buried behind stone and mortar. Dr. Drayton kept his private journal until his death in 1771. In his final entry, written 3 days before a stroke killed him, he reflected on the case. I have delivered hundreds of children in my practice, but I have never seen anything like what I witnessed in February 1749. A woman of 51, declared barren by multiple physicians, including myself, bearing a healthy child. Was it miracle, medicine, simply nature proving our understanding incomplete? I die not knowing. Perhaps that is as it should be. We are not meant to understand everything. We are meant to witness, document, and remain humble before mysteries that exceed our comprehension. The Catholic Church never officially acknowledged the scandal beyond internal correspondence. No public statement was ever issued. The silence was absolute and intentional. Truth buried would fade faster than truth confronted. By 1850 years after Sister Marie gave birth, the story had transformed into vague legend. Old people occasionally mentioned something that happened at the Catholic convent, but specifics had dissolved. What remains is uncomfortable recognition. A woman claimed to use scientific knowledge in service of faith. A young man was manipulated and discarded. A child was born against probability and raised in complete ignorance. An institution chose reputation over truth. The facts confirm these elements occurred. Whether Sister Marie's methods actually worked, whether the pregnancy resulted from her procedures or from fertility doctors had incorrectly dismissed, whether her claims were genuine faith or elaborate rationalization, the questions remained unanswered in her lifetime and remain unanswered still. What cannot be disputed is that a woman of 51 bore a healthy child in 1749. That this event caused a scandal the Catholic Church desperately tried to erase, and that lives were irrevocably changed by decisions made behind the convent doors. This is buried truths. Neither the stories they tried to erase, we're making sure they're never forgotten again.